The book of Daniel is one of the most fascinating books on the topic of prophecy. The setting of its composition and writing takes place during and in the Babylonian Empire. Its content has often intrigued and puzzled many Christians and even theologians. And perhaps one of the most fascinating topics in the book of Daniel is the topic of the Antichrist. Some Christians believe that the little horn spoken of in Daniel chapter 8 is referring to the Antichrist. And so what I intend on doing for you today is expositing Daniel chapter 8 and revealing the identity of the little horn. So let's begin, shall we? The 8th chapter of the book of Daniel takes place in the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, king of Babylon. In the vision, Daniel the prophet sees two beasts. One beast is the ram with 2 horns, and the other beast is the goat with 1 horn. The ram's identity is provided for us in verse 20. It's the Middle Persian Empire. 1 horn represents Media, and the other horn represents Persia. And the king who ruled over it was King Darius. The identity of the goat, however, is the kingdom and empire of Greece. Greece was well known and famous for its philosophers. Greece gave us Socrates, and Socrates was a teacher of Plato, and Plato a teacher of Aristotle, and Aristotle a teacher of Alexander the Great. Now, this Alexander the Great just so happens to be the ruler over Greece, and more particularly is the horn referred to on the goat. Now, according to Daniel chapter 8, verse 7, this goat ends up defeating the ram. As we've learned, King Darius is synonymous with the ram. Now, according to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, we learned that Alexander the Great defeated King Darius. And it reads, After Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came from the land of Kittim, had defeated King Darius of the Persians and the Medes, he succeeded him as king. He had previously become king of Greece. However, according to Daniel chapter 8, verse 8, this great horn would eventually break. What this represents is Alexander the Great's power eventually being broken. And according to 1 Maccabees, after 12 years, he died. And after his death, he ended up distributing his kingdom to his 4 generals, thus fulfilling verse 8 of Daniel chapter 8, where the scriptures tell us, But once he became powerful, the large horn was broken, and in its place 4 prominent horns came up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Then verse 9 tells us that 1 small horn ended up emerging from the 4 horns, and I quote, And out of one of them came a rather small horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the beautiful land. As I mentioned already, these 4 horns represented each of Alexander the Great's 4 generals. And these 4 generals ended up establishing their own empires. The following are Cassander of Macedonia, Lysimachus of Thrace, Seleucus of Syria, and Ptolemy of Egypt. Now the small horn that emerged from the 4 horns represented Antiochus Epiphanes that emerged from the Seleucid Empire. As we've already learned, the little horn refers to Antiochus Epiphanes, and that little horn, according to verse 9, grew great toward the south, east, and toward the beautiful land, that is, Jerusalem. According to verse 10, he would trample the Jews, and according to verse 11, he would take away the regular sacrifice. And so according to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 41 through 43, it reads, Then the king wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one, and that all should give up their particular customs. All the Gentiles accepted the command of the king. Many, even from Israel, gladly adopted his religion. They sacrificed to idols and profaned the Sabbath. According to Daniel chapter 8, verse 13, the Bible tells us that Antiochus Epiphanes would set up the abomination that causes desolation. The abomination that is being referred to there is a pig that was offered on the holy altar. According to 1 Maccabees chapter 1, verse 54, it says, Now on the 15th day of Chislev, in the 145th year, they erected a desolating sacrilege on the altar of burnt offering. Now it's important to note that this abomination that causes desolation was nothing more than a mere foreshadow of a desolation that Jesus spoke of in Matthew 24. In Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, Jesus applies Daniel 9 and Daniel 12 concerning the abomination that causes desolation. And according to verse 34, he states that it would take place before the passing of his generation. And in fact, according to Josephus from the 1st century, he states that the abomination that caused desolation was in fact committed in the temple. And this was all leading up to what would be the fulfillment of Jesus' prophecy in Matthew 24, verse 3, concerning the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of the temple, that 1 stone would not be left upon another. And so the temple was destroyed in 70 AD in precisely 40 years, just as Jesus promised.